All right, we're gonna continue our conversation with the doshas. Oh, am I on mute? Okay, I'm gonna start that again. Okay, we're gonna continue our conversation on the doshas from where we left off last class. I will add this video to your the class portal about Prakriti and Vikriti. So if you want to look back at it, it's a short lesson, just the doshas side by side. So let me pull up the presentation. And I can, here we go. I'm getting better at this. So we had talked about the doshas individually. Did you see any like things that sort of resonated with you, or you could pick out like ideas of? Okay, Koji, now he's busy, and you are too. Okay.
I saw that Oliver is a hotel.
Ciao. Okay, so we were talking about did you see things that sort of resonated with you as individuals when we were going through each dosha, and you know our or maybe people tendencies that you might have? Did you see that? I see some of you on video, so you can nod, or you could do thumbs up, or if that's not the case. So hopefully yes, that you saw some things. So let's look at the doshas side by side. I'm just gonna move through the presentation because no. Let me see. Here we go. So we won't go back over things. We're just going to keep moving forward. So this is the doshas side by side. So we left off in figuring out what was the best to balance each dosha. And now we're going to look at them side by side so you can sort of distinguish between the three. Although, of course, we have all three of them in us. So we're just distinguishing sort of where we're at. So here we are. These are the three different bodies. So now, of course, we don't all fit into one of these three categories. Some of us could have a vata frame but be shorter, or a pitta frame and be taller. But these are pretty much the three categories. So you see the long, lean vata, the sort of more muscular, developed pitta body, very proportionate, could be petite, but not necessarily. And then you see kapha, who is, very voluptuous. I don't know why I don't have the male bodies here either. I don't know why I didn't do that slide, but I do have them. So let's look at them in relationship to the development. So in childhood, kapha is shy, quiet, and tends to cling to parents, mom or dad, or cling to things that are familiar. So they may not want to change. They don't like to change activities very easily, or change places. They prefer to be at home with their parents. That's where they feel safe, comfortable. The pitta child will be a little bit, I say, bossy pants, like a very driven, leadership, courageous little kid who might be a little bit loud, prone to temper tantrums, that sort of thing. Argumentative, usually pretty intelligent, asks a lot of questions, more so than the average child. Can also have periods of great focus, like focus on specific activity. Usually prefers challenges, not afraid of things. Vata, social, active, dreamer. This is the one that's like, hi, how are you? We'll go up and talk to pretty much anyone. Obviously kids are in a more of a kapha phase, all of them, but so they're kind of like developing little doshas. So they do have their kapha, which is a little bit more active in childhood because of their development in the stage that they're in. But the vata kid might be might be caught twirling their hair, staring out the window, chasing the butterflies, that sort of thing. They could also be very active, climbing everything or moving around quickly, that sort of thing. As teenagers, kapha dominant people tend to be a little bit shy, a little more sluggish, sleep a lot. Teenagers tend to sleep a lot, but I don't remember sleeping a lot as a child, as a teenager. But like there are a lot of teenagers who do sleep in, so that's our kind of kapha nature. The wallflower kind of lingering in the back, not really getting involved, that sort of thing. The pitta teenager would be more of take on leadership roles, speak up in class, be athletic. They could be even tend to be a little bit aggressive. They could be they can be outspoken, but like because they have the answer and they know and this sort of thing. Not just to be like, they're not generally the class clown. That's usually a vata character. Whereas, yeah, those vata teenagers are like kind of all over the place, a little bit spacey. They don't necessarily have great grades because they're a little bit unfocused and they're like a little bit all over the place. They're very social, easily distracted. They change their friends often. They can be also very dramatic. They can have big mood changes, that sort of thing. So of course, every teenager has all three of these characteristics and all three doshas within them, and they can kind of move between the three, but there's usually one character trait that's pretty clear and dominant. It starts their dominant dosha, it seems to become more apparent during this time. So as adults, generally these are the careers that people dominant in the following doshas tend to gravitate towards. So kapha being very nurturing and loving, they tend to gravitate towards nurturing roles like teachers, nurses, social workers, singers, supporting roles. They could also be programmers or things that require a lot of organization, methodology. So they're like into methods and doing things like that. Pitta people tend to be more like driven, kind of a little bit more aggressive in their careers. So they could be in business, in leadership roles. They could be accountants. I mean, you can have a kapha accountant too that's very like fastidious about rules and things. That's tends to be also like a kapha person who likes to do the same thing over and over again. Pitta people might also like law because of the righteousness of it and like the argumentative side of law and order. They could be a doctor, they could be in politics. Those are typical, or athletics or in competition, that kind of thing. Those tend to be pitta dominant careers. For vata tends to be a little bit changing all over the place. Like they're really good in public relations where they have to deal with people and talk to a lot of people. They don't like the same thing every day, unlike kapha that prefers to have a steady, regular job where someone is paying them to show up to do a certain specific role. They're not and pitta tends to be a risk taker and really kind of climb the corporate ladder, that kind of thing, be seen, be heard. And vata is like, I'm gonna be a life coach, I'm gonna try things, I'm gonna teach English in Korea for a while. They might be into art, and that's this is not to downplay anything, but this is sort of tends to be the nature of vata. They like to, they might be journalists, they might be travel agents, they might be people who have a different, they could be also teachers that just are a little bit more, changing, dynamic, that kind of thing. They might have multiple streams of income. These are sort of the things that vata tends to gravitate towards. Okay, stress response. When kapha is stressed, they withdraw, so they go silent. When pitta is stressed, they tend to get angry. And when vata is stressed, they tend to panic. So, we can have all three of these stress responses given a situation, but is there one that you gravitate towards most? When, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be complete anger. It could be frustration. It doesn't have to be complete panic. It could be just anxiety. It doesn't have to be complete withdrawal. It can just be going silent, going quiet, turning in. When I did a course with the Chopra Institute long time ago, they talked about
my popped pajamas, they're dry.
that's fantastic. Thank you. Now everyone knows that his favorite pajamas are dry. Okay, so they tend to, so basically you can withdraw, you can go silent, you can get angry, you can get frustrated, you can panic, you can also just get anxious. When I did the Deepak Chopra course in Ayurveda long time ago, long before I started Ayurveda school, they said these are the stress responses for Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Pitta would say, you're the problem, it's you to blame. And Vata would say, what did I do? I'm the one to blame. And Kapha would say, whatever. So those are sort of like, to sum it up. So typically Pitta tends to be externally focused on like what other people are doing wrong. Vata tends to go inward, turn the finger on themselves and be like, there's something wrong with me. You know, I'm the problem. And Kapha just sort of goes dull, like, whatever, there's a problem. Okay, fine, whatever. So none of those responses are good or bad. That's just sort of the way these doshas react. Okay, when it comes to sleep, Kapha has a long, heavy sleep that's sluggish. They tend to be very sluggish in the morning. Pitta tends to fall asleep quickly. They have a short and sweet sleep. They can function on little to no sleep for a while, not forever, but for a while. You know, they're like kind of efficient with their sleeping. They'll just fall asleep and wake up and that's it. Vata tends to have a light and disturbed sleep. They can be insomnia. They can be, they can just like have a hard time falling asleep or hard time staying asleep, that sort of thing. And of course, anytime that we have an imbalance in any of these three areas, our sleep will be affected. The same way our digestive system is affected, but when Vata is high, we're not going to sleep as well. You know, that's for sure. Okay, so energy levels, coming to the end here. Energy levels, the three, Kapha has a slow and steady energy, so they might be slow to start, but then they have pretty good stamina. So they'll just keep doing the thing that they need to do until it's finished, for example. Pitta tends to have high, intense, go energy until they get, until they explode, basically. And Vata's energy is variable. So they tend to go fast and then they exhaust themselves. So Vata, in terms of athletics, which we'll get into in a while, but those energy levels are also govern what is good, what kind of sports they tend to be good at. Appetite, Kapha has a low appetite. Even though they are larger body, they tend not to eat that much. But they can eat a lot when they're emotional. So because they turn inward and they shut down to soothe themselves, to like calm them down, they tend to overeat even when they're not hungry. So they can be emotional eaters. Pitta's appetite is strong and fierce, and it can come out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden they will be like focused on other things and then they need to eat right away. And if they don't, they get very hangry. So, and Vata's appetite is variable, just like everything with Vata is variable. Sometimes it's really intense. Sometimes they forget to eat. Sometimes, they're a little bit all over the place. So routine is really important for eating for all three doshas, because it helps to remind Kapha not to eat unless it's mealtime or unless they're hungry. It's good for Pitta because they need constant fuel in their bodies. Otherwise, they start to burn out. And for Vata, it's good because they forget to eat. So their digestion, kapha digestion or kapha dominant digestion tends to be slow and sluggish. If they overeat, they can feel nauseous. Pitta's digestion is fast and fierce, and when you're very high in pitta, it's like the food just moves right through you, and they can have loose stool or even diarrhea. They can have a lot of acidity, like acid reflux, that sort of thing. And Vata's digestion is variable. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. They can be gassy, bloated. They have a tendency towards constipation, but sometimes they have constipation for 3 days and then they have diarrhea for 3 days. So it's very changeable. When it comes to elimination, kapha is like regular. Same time, every day, not a problem in this department. Athletic needs. So kapha is vigorous. Is a vigorous and active exercise. Because of they have good stamina and they're strong built, they tend to be great at weightlifting, wrestling. They tend to be great at long distance things that require a lot of stamina. So they could be a long distance runner, long distance cross country skier. They can be speed walker, like, you know, those speed walkers that have the funny movement in their hips. It's really a kapha thing because they have this stamina. Pitta is really good for pretty much anything that has to do with competition, preparation, focus. They're good marathon runners. They do require a bit of kapha in order to complete a marathon because of the longevity. They're good at team sports because they're good at strategizing. They're good at things that require like a target, like biathlon, those sorts of things. They're good at relays. They're great at swimming. Kapha also because the water element. Vata is really good at sprinting, so fast bursts. They're very good at things that require fast pace or anything that's changeable, like race car driving, for example. So, but what they need, so Pitta needs a slow, gentle practice that has some challenge, and it's best if it's outside, so they have fresh air, change of scenery, perspective. They calm down when they're in nature, so paddle boarding would be good for them. You know, hiking, all those outdoor sports, skiing. Vata, they require gentle, calming, grounding exercise. Dance is good, anything that with a little bit of creativity. Walks, you know, nothing that's too intense because they have, although they're good at sprinting, they can't really sustain anything with a high intensity or a long distance for too long. So their preference, so you know, if they're not athletes, what is our like, we're not professional athletes, but what is our preference? Kapha, not much. Don't really feel like doing much of anything. If they do it because they have to, but Pitta, they like it. It's important to them. They like intense exercise. They like HIIT, you know, HIIT, those HIIT practices, high interval training practices, those ones. They like competition. They like hot yoga. They like, even though hot yoga is not really good for them, they like things that are like intense. They like to get the most out of their workout. They want it to be hard and sweaty, even though that's not necessarily the best thing for them, but that's what they like. Vata changes all the time. They might do exercise for, you know, 2 weeks straight, and then they're just gonna stop. And then they'll get into something else like, oh, I love this Tae Bo. Remember Tae Bo? You know, and then they'll be like, meh. But they like things that are creative. So things like Zumba is good for Vata, things that are like a little bit fun. You know, those things are great. Water sports are good for Vata too because of the water element, very soothing. So just to tie it up, in Ayurveda, the only We only treat the Vikriti and what is out of balance. So if the things that are working, great, just keep going. When things are not working, that's when we need to make a shift. And we also make a shift when things look like they're starting to go out of balance, or you feel them going out of balance. And in our next session, we're going to look at Ayurveda and yoga. So how does the yoga practice and Ayurveda work together? What specific yoga practices, what specific postures are good for each of the doshas, and in what context? Okay, so that is the doshas side by side. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more clarity. And of course, you can either text me questions or write in the chat.